I mean, think about it. When you're feeling really frustrated, do you behave the same way as when you're feeling like you're on a roll and things are flowing? Obviously not. You have the same ability, but things act and behave differently coming out of you. You speak differently, you communicate differently, everything changes. I'll give you another example. Have you ever forgotten something simple like your own home telephone number or address or how to spell the word the? Ever had one of those enlightening experiences? Now, you know how to spell the word the. How come you couldn't remember? The answer is because you're in what I call a stupid state, right? You were in a state of mind where your brain wasn't able to get a hold of the answers. The answers are there, but you couldn't get there. So I believe one of the most important things, probably the most important thing that you and I can do in our lives to create the power and joy and passion that we really want is to learn to manage our own states of mind. In fact, think of the cost of not managing them. If you don't manage your emotional state, it'll cost you virtually everything you want in your life. Friends, family, success, and just the joy that every one of us wants to experience on a daily basis. Hey, let me ask you a question. Is what happens in your life the thing that determines how you feel at any moment in time? Yes or no? In other words, it doesn't matter whether or not, for example, the economy is doing really strong as to whether or not you feel good. Most people say no. Some people say, well, you bet. Now, does it matter how your relationships are going? Does that determine how you feel? Is how you feel determined by the weather? By how much sun or rain there is? Is it determined by how other people treat you? I'm here to tell you the answer to that is no. I'm not saying that it doesn't complement or support you feeling one way or another. I'm saying how you feel at any moment in time is purely designed and the result of how you are directing your own mind and body at that moment. What I'm saying to you is no matter what is happening in your life, you are in control of your own states. And once you understand that, number one, and number two, you use that ability, you now have control over your life at a whole new level. And you have more fun and joy and passion than you ever dreamed of once you take that responsibility and take that control. Now, for some people, when they say, well, that seems like a heavy responsibility, well, look at the opposite. What's the price of not managing your states? Well, I'll ask you a question. What does John Belushi, Elvis Presley, Freddie Prinze, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Marilyn Monroe, what do they all have in common? They're all people that never learned how to manage their state, that's what. They all were people that had every reason in the world to be happy by anybody else's standards, but who destroyed themselves, literally killed themselves in the end. I mean, Belushi's one of my favorite examples. Why? Because I like this guy. Didn't you? Wasn't this a fun guy? I mean, if you were to think of somebody, didn't he feel like this guy that you could connect with? I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed him. And millions of other people did as well. He had what most people would think would make them happy. He had all these people that loved him, appreciated his work. He got to be creative. He was in movies. He was in television. He was on Broadway. I mean, here was a guy that was spontaneous. He had a great family that totally loved him. He had all the money and fame that most people think that they could possibly want or need, and yet he's not here. How come? He's dead. Why? Not because of old age, you'll recall, but because this man did not know how to control his own emotions within himself, and he tried to change the way he was feeling by using drugs. He used drugs as a way to change his state, and he's no longer here, and neither of the other people I mentioned on this list. Think about it. There's a major price in now managing your state, and in managing your state, there's major rewards. Now let's contrast Belushi with a friend of mine. His name is W. Mitchell, one of the people in the world that I not only love most, but also have the most respect for. W. Mitchell's a unique guy. 15 years ago, he had a unique experience, one that most people would never forget. He was driving his motorcycle 65 miles an hour down a freeway when something caught his attention. When he looked over while he continued to drive forward, he got fixed on something. I don't know if you've ever done that. He got stuck there a little too long. Well, when he looked up, he was traveling 65 miles an hour right into the back of a Mack truck that had stopped in front of him. In a last-minute, split-second decision to try and save his own life, he slammed himself on the ground, and he slid 65 miles an hour underneath this truck across the pavement. Then the worst thing happened. The gas cap popped off. Fuel spilled out all over the place, and then from the friction, exploded and ignited. 3/4 of his skin was burned off. His entire face was mutilated. His fingers burned all the way down to the knuckles. He woke up 2 weeks later in a hospital bed in searing pain, fearing to even breathe. Now, for most people at this point, they'd say, hey, I'm out of here. Why stick around in this body? I'd rather just die. But not only did he not die, but he's become an example of true possibility for people all over the country. I mean, this gentleman could not even take drugs because his body was in such bad shape, but when people met him, they thought he must be on drugs because he seems so up. You know, they go in and talk to him, they feel bad, and he goes, hey, it's over, we just got to move on. His mother said, well, you just must not realize how bad it is. Well, the reality is, he just made a decision. He decided that he was going to manage his state. Why? Because he saw the alternative as much more painful. He said, look, I got one of two choices. I can feel bad emotionally about everything I've lost and just make my total life a mess emotionally and have more pain to add to my physical pain, or I can focus on what I'm going to do, which means I can at least focus on something that could bring me some pleasure and get rid of my focus on the physical pain. And that's what he did. His life has become such an example because he kept managing his emotions. Now, not only did he do that, but within 3 years, he managed himself so well that he got back into business, even though he didn't look too terribly attractive. But he ended up going into business and becoming extremely successful. The new company he developed after his accident became the #1 employer of its type in the state of Vermont. He became a millionaire. He even learned to fly airplanes. Now, that's not the end of the story. About 8 years later, he's flying his airplane with 3 other friends in Colorado, and he made himself a rather big mistake. He didn't go through his checklist, and he didn't notice that there was frost that had developed on the wing. And when he took off, he crashed. 3 people walked away. He was not one of them. He was paralyzed from the waist down for life. So they cut off his toes since he didn't need them anymore and sewed them on his hands so he'd have something to be able to grasp things with. He's stuck in a wheelchair now for life. Of course, he doesn't look at as stuck in a wheelchair. In fact, you say at this point he must have given up, right? No. Even after his wife left him, he said, look, I don't want to be around a fried cripple. Even after all that, he still didn't give up. He turned around, and the city he was living in Colorado had some major problems. He decided to become the mayor of that town. After that, he decided to run for lieutenant governor of the state of Colorado. He placed 3rd in a group of 6, and he ran on the issues, not on a sympathy vote. And he campaigned door to door. Now remember, this guy didn't look too terribly good. In fact, he used to wear a button that said, send me to the governor's mansion, and I won't just be another pretty face. Kind of a nice way to interrupt people's patterns and make them associate something new to you. Now, he didn't win the lieutenant governor's place. He still didn't give up. He now has his own radio show in Colorado, and he has found the woman of his dreams and remarried. So I've got to tell you that if you start to tell me, well, gosh, Tony, I got all these problems. It's hard to manage my state. Just think about W. Mitchell. When I look at somebody like Belushi and see all that he had, and I look at somebody like Mitchell, who seems to have all these challenges but is so happy, so successful, such a sense of possibility, it becomes clear to me that I have no excuse to ever not manage my state on a consistent basis. No matter how big the problems may seem, you're much better than anybody like that might ever hope to be. So how do we manage our states? Well, one, remember, I believe virtually everything in life comes down to why to first, then how to. I believe if you want to succeed, you got to have 80% of success is figuring out why to succeed, why to manage your state, for example. 20% is how. Here's the how. And let's do it quickly, and let's just get right to doing it and doing some exercises. There are 2 primary ways to control your state of mind and body. They are, number 1, controlling the way you use your physical body, what we call your physiology, and number 2, controlling your mental focus. That is what you pay attention to, what you think about, what you picture, what you say to yourself. Today we're going to focus on how to use our physical bodies to create the emotions that we want at any moment in time. And then on your next tape, we're going to work on how to control our focus, how to control the mental imagery and pictures and things that we think about in a way that immediately changes our state as well. Let's start and focus again today on physical movement. Now I want you to think about something here. In order to feel anything in your life, you feel it through your nervous system, through your physical body. Now if I told you I know someone who is totally depressed, I bet you could tell me about the way they move or even their posture, and you would probably have an accurate representation. In other words, if I told you about someone I know that's totally depressed, and let's say they're outside your door right now, and I said to you, for $100,000, describe for me, what is this person like? What's their posture like, for example? What would you say? Most people will say, slumped over. Where's this person's head? Most people will say, down. Where are their eyes? Again, most people will say, down. Where is this person's breathing? Is it full or shallow? Again, most people say shallow. And where is this person's facial expressions? Are their muscles in their face pulled up and tight, or are they down and slack? Again, most people say slack. How did you match up with these descriptions? Again, if you're like most people, most of those descriptions match the picture you have in your mind. Why is it that when we think of a depressed person, we think of somebody who's physically hunched over a little bit, looking down, talking a little bit more slowly, with their eyes down and their breathing shallow and their facial muscles slack? The answer is, in order to get depressed, you got to work at it. It's not easy. You have to use your body in a certain specific way. I mean, try something ridiculous with me for a moment, won't you? Sit up right now in your chair. In fact, if you're not driving, stand up. If you're driving, that would be difficult. But if you're sitting, stand up for a second if you would. And if you're sitting and you're in a car, then sit up. But I want you to stand up ideally. Stand tall, breathing fully, really strong. Breathe fully. And I want you to look up towards your ceiling. And as you're standing there, breathing tall, looking at your ceiling, what I want you to do is something really ridiculous, really dumb. Put a huge, silly grin on your face. Go ahead, try it. Oh, come on, nobody's noticing. You're by yourself. And if they are noticing, then you'll get their attention anyway. Put a big grin on your face. Look at the ceiling. Listen to me now. Now, what I want you to do, while you stay standing tall with your shoulders back, breathing fully with this big grin on your face, I want you to get depressed without changing any aspect of your body. Don't change your facial expression. Oh, come on, you can do it. Hang in there. Get depressed. No, you know, some of you are cheating. I can tell. I'm in the room. If you drop those shoulders, if you drop your head, if you stop breathing, or if you stop smiling, it doesn't count. Stand tall. Breathing big smile, looking at the ceiling, that's right, and get depressed without changing.